Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with the second part of my review of the Erzetich Phobos headphone. I did a first impressions a few weeks ago about this and gave you a pretty good look at it, but I'm going to go over the specifications again real quick and take a look at the headphone just in case you didn't see my first video. So anyway, this headphone is made in Slovenia and it currently sells for 1,999 euros, which works out at today's exchange rate to 2,188 US dollars. The US distributor is onsungaudio.com and they currently sell this at $21.99. This is a full-size, over-the-ear, open-back headphone, and it uses a planar magnetic type of driver. It has an impedance of 45 ohms, and the weight of this headphone, Erzetich says it's 690 grams, and according to my kitchen scale, that's pretty accurate. I came up with 688 grams. The ear cups are made of linden wood, which comes from Slovenia, and this is a solid wood ear cup. This is not a veneer, and the grills, I believe, are made of aluminum. This headphone, the ear pads are made of a synthetic leather. Erzetich has chosen not to use animal products in their headphones. The ear pads, though, are very thick, very soft, and pretty comfortable. The adjustment on this, you have a knob up on the top here that adjusts your height on the ear cups, and then they also swivel side to side and they swivel up and down. The headband doesn't have a lot of clamping force. It's basically just there to hold the headphones up in place where they should be. And the headphones use a mini XLR connection, detachable, two-sided. There is no real front or back of these headphones. The cable connection is centered and the ear pads are not tapered, so it doesn't really matter which way you put them. There is a name on top which you can use, you know, to keep it straight, or the cable that Erzetich supplies has a red sleeve on the right connection, so you can hook it up either way and then keep track of which is your right channel with the red sleeve. Once again, uses a 4-pin mini XLR connection at the headphone end. The cable is about 2 meters long, and at the amp end it uses a standard 1/4 inch or 6.3 millimeter connection. These headphones are a bit heavy, but it's 690 grams. In fact, I think that's the heaviest of any headphone that I've reviewed so far. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. And they are very large. The ear cups are, they're octagon shape, and from side to side I've measured them at 115 millimeters or 4.5 inches. So they are the heaviest and largest headphone that I've reviewed so far. But surprisingly, to me, they're very comfortable. They feel big and they feel heavy in my hands, but once I put them on my head, the weight kind of goes away. I mean, I will be honest with you, heavy headphones normally don't bother me. I'm more bothered by headphones with too much clamping force. That will get to me before the weight will. So anyway, though, the ear pads are very soft. They're large, so it's spread out over a large area. And I personally find them very comfortable and have no problem wearing these for an hour, even a couple hours at a time. Getting into the sound of these, I would consider this headphone to be pretty much neutral in its tone balance. There is a slight maybe 2 or 3 decibel hump in the mid bass. I would say around maybe centered at about 80 hertz, and but besides from that, and like I said, very minor, about 2 or 3 decibels. Besides from that, they're pretty much dead neutral. I mean, you know, all the way from the bass up to the mid to upper treble. The frequency extension on these is very good. I saw a chart that showed a little bit of roll-off in the sub bass, but I'm not really hearing that as much as what it looked like on the chart. In fact, they've got, like I said, a little bit of a slight bump in the mid bass, so the bass sounds pretty good to these, good to me. The treble extends well. The Mania, the lower priced Erzetich, has a little bit of roll-off in the, I'd say about starting at about 8,000 hertz, it rolls off a little bit, and these definitely have less roll-off, so there's more presence up in the mid and upper treble on these. The bass I would describe as neutral, but just, like I said, a slight emphasis, just 2 or 3 decibels, not much. Just enough to give it a nice sound. It's deep, it's solid, it's tight, and really decent bass. You know, for a neutral headphone, and a lot of people consider neutral headphones to be kind of thin sounding and lacking bass, and you know, I'm not a bass head or anything, but higher end headphones tend to be more towards the neutral side. I think that's what people want in a high end headphone. They're you know, aimed more at like acoustical, orchestral music, jazz, that type of thing. And most people that are buying high end headphones aren't looking for emphasized bass, and that's the way these are. But the bass is definitely there. It's definitely solid and tight, and it sounds really good to me. I mean, it's just about perfect. Unless you're looking for an emphasized bass, which if that's the case, the Mania might be the perfect headphone for you. So anyway, the mids, very neutral, very smooth, and very, very detailed. The mids just, they bring out everything. I mean, nothing is going to hide from you. This headphone, if it's on the recording, this headphone's going to bring it out. The treble, I would also describe as neutral, very detailed, very clear, very sharp, but not harsh at all. I've never heard anything harsh come out of this headphone. The detail and clarity, I would say, is exceptional. It's right up there with the top. I mean, you know, only the best headphones I've heard can come up with the detail level of this headphone. It's, I would describe it as almost analytical, and it can sound analytical at times, but not to the point of, you know, being fatiguing, just super detailed. I mean, this headphone really, really brings out the detail. The imaging and separation, I would say, are very good. I have no problems locating where each instrument's coming from. The separation between the voices, the different instruments, all very good. Nothing ever blurs together. It has a very large soundstage, so everything's very well separated with this headphone. And getting into the soundstage, that's really the strong point of this headphone, in my opinion. This headphone has a very large, I mean, I'd almost describe it as huge soundstage. The width, very, very wide as any headphone I've heard. Probably up till now, the headphone with the widest soundstage that I've heard or reviewed would be the Hi-Fi Man Aria. And I don't have that here to directly compare it. I haven't had the two headphones here at the same time. But from what I remember of the Aria, I think this soundstage is probably just as wide as the Aria. has just as much height as the Aria did, which the height was exceptional on the Aria also. And I think it has even more depth than the Aria does. That was the one thing that the Aria lacked a little bit, was depth in the soundstage. And I believe this has more depth. So I would say overall, the soundstage on this headphone is probably larger than any other headphone that I've heard or reviewed up to this point. As far as amps, I tried this with 4 different amps. The Benchmark HPA2, my Audio GD Master 9, the Kennerton Atlas, and I tried it with the Felix Audio Echo, which is an OTL tube amp. And it didn't really seem to make a lot of difference in the tone balance going from what I would consider a neutral solid state amp going to like the OTL. The Echo did warm up the mid-range a little bit, and it did give the headphone just a little bit more sub-bass, but didn't drastically change the sound. But to be honest, I think this headphone sounds really good with just a neutral solid state amp. And in fact, I think the best sound I got out of it was using my Audio GD Master 9 from the balanced output. And the cable that comes stock with this headphone is a single-ended cable, but because this headphone uses a 4-pin mini XLR, it's compatible with Kennerton cables, and I do have a 4-pin XLR balanced cable for Kennerton, so I was able to use it on this headphone. And when I hooked it up to the Master 9 using the balanced cable, the soundstage got even larger. It just got huge. And I think part of that may be that the Master 9 has a stereo separation of something like 130 decibels. So anyway, the soundstage just got huge and really kind of three-dimensional or holographic when I used the Master 9. So really, that was my favorite amp with this. This headphone just sounded outstanding with the Master 9. It sounded good with everything I tried, and like I said, the Echo gave it a little bit of mid-range warmth and a little bit of boost in the sub-bass, but like I said, I really enjoyed this hooked up to my Master 9 using the balanced output. The music I listened to with this headphone, and I think that's important for you to know what music I use, because if I don't tell you what music I used evaluating this headphone, my opinion really doesn't mean much, because if you are listening to music that's completely different, then you're not going to get the same results. And what I found with a neutral headphone like this and such a detailed headphone is this headphone is great for acoustical music, orchestral music. It just does an exceptional job with pianos and acoustic guitars. Just brings out the detail and just makes them sound so real. And that's what I really enjoyed with this. So that was kind of the basis for what I chose to use when reviewing this headphone. So I'll just give you an idea. This is just some of the music I used while evaluating this headphone. And I'll just go through this real quick. Norah Jones, Come Away With Me. Paul Simon, Graceland. Sarah McLachlan, Fumbling Towards Ecstasy. The Blues Travelers, I think this is a greatest hit CD. Some Tchaikovsky from the Nutcracker Suite. Headphone did an exceptional job with that. The Sundays, Blind. Lots of acoustic guitars. Some Steely Dan, Aja, one of the best recorded albums ever. Just sounded outrageously good with this headphone. some Tears for Fears, Songs from the Big Chair, some Cranberries, what is this? Everything, no, Everybody's Doing It, Why Shouldn't We? Fleetwood Mac, The Dance, an exceptionally recorded live album. This headphone just brought out the details in the acoustic guitars, as good as just about anything I've ever heard. I will talk about that in a few minutes though. Natalie Merchant, Tiger Lily, once again, beautiful voice and a lot of acoustic guitars. Jewel, what is this? Oh, Pieces of You, I think her first album, and Tori Amos, and this would be Little Earthquake. So that just gives you an idea of the type of music I used when doing my review of this headphone. I wanted to compare this a little bit to a couple other headphones, and I've spent a lot of time in the last week listening to this, and I did quite a bit of comparing. And one of the headphones that I did use in comparison, excuse me a minute. Sorry, my throat gets dry when I sit here and talk for too long. So anyway, one of the headphones I used is the Mania by Erzetich, also kind of the little brother to this headphone. And I wanted to give you an idea, sort of what the differences were, so I'll kind of touch on that. The Mania is definitely more bassy. The Mania has sort of a V-shaped tone balance where the Phobos is more neutral. So the Mania definitely has more emphasis in the bass, and the sub bass, and the Mania also has a bit of a peak in the 6,000 hertz range in the, I guess that'd be sort of the mid treble, but the Mania rolls off a little sooner getting into the high treble. The Mania has a thicker, richer, creamier mid range, but doesn't have quite the detail of the Phobos. The Phobos just has exceptional detail. The Mania is a little more forgiving of less than perfect recordings, where the Phobos, if a recording is not done well, it will reveal it. So, I mean, when you're listening to a really good recording, the Phobos is going to be exceptional, but if you're listening to a recording that wasn't done that well, you're going to feel kind of like you're wasting a really good headphone on a less than perfect recording, and you're kind of missing the point of having this headphone in the first place. I mean, this headphone is so good, you're gonna want to run good recordings through it. So, and then the Mania is quite a bit smaller and a bit lighter too. I think it's almost 200 grams lighter. So anyway, and then the other headphone I compared this to, and I was actually quite surprised when I did this, because I've had this headphone for probably about 5 weeks now, and I've listened to it quite a bit, but I didn't ever compare it directly to the Kennerton Thror, and that's kind of my reference. That's my high-end reference at this point. So I decided, well, the Phobos at $2,200, that's a pretty high-end headphone, and it's not quite the price of the Thror, but I figured I would, give it a shot and see how the two compared, and I was actually quite pleasantly surprised to find out that the Phobos has quite a bit in common with the Thror sound-wise, and really held its own pretty well. So I did give you a quick comparison of the two. Because of the 2 or 3 hertz of that bump in the mid bass of the Phobos, it actually has a little bit more weight to the bass than the Thror, and I actually welcome that. It really sounds good. So in fact, the Thror, I sometimes finding myself giving it a couple decibels of boost in the bass, depending on the music I'm listening to. So, I welcome that 2 or 3 decibel boost that the Phobos has. The Thrower does have a little bit warmer mid-range, especially into the upper mid-range. And because of that, female vocals just sound a little bit smoother, and I do hear a little bit more texture and detail in female voices. And also acoustic guitars. A couple of times I've noticed that I've heard a little bit, slightly more detail in the Thrower in the acoustic guitars, but really, I mean, the fact is these headphones are pretty close. The thing about the Thrower that I love is it has this really deep three-dimensional holographic soundstage, and I've never to this day heard a headphone that came anywhere close to the Thrower in that respect. And the Phobos comes very close. It's not quite there, but it's very close to that same feeling. And what the Thrower does is it just gives me a feeling of being there. Everything just sounds so real, and I feel like I'm right there. And the Phobos is real close. It's not quite there, but it's like 90% of the way there. So I actually really like the Phobos in that respect. And in fact, it's got a little more, the Phobos has a little more width and a little more height to the soundstage than the Thrower does. So I mean, I feel like I'm just surrounded by music. It's just coming at me from all directions. I just feel like I'm kind of floating in it. And both headphones just kind of take me away to another place and another time. And up till now, no other headphone has done that as well as the Kennerton Thrower. But like I said, the Phobos comes really close. So is there anything I don't like about this headphone? I would say the only issues I have with this headphone are it's a little bit large, which once it's on my head doesn't really matter, and it's a little bit heavy, but that really hasn't bothered me. I mean, like I said, when I pick it up in my hands, it is a large headphone. I mean, this is a big headphone, and there's some weight to it. You know, if I put this on, I can, you know, I guess I have an average size head. Maybe you can see how large this headphone actually is. So, you know, the Mania is smaller, but the Mania doesn't have that huge open soundstage the way this does. I mean, that's the one thing I'll say about this. I don't think I've ever heard a headphone that sounds as open as this does. I don't have the Hi-Fi Man Aria here to compare directly, and it kind of had that same sound, but I think this might outdo it. I mean, this is just a very open sounding headphone, and I think just its really large size and really large open grill probably is the main contributor to that. So really, I mean, other than that, I don't have any complaints about it. You know, it's just a big, heavy headphone, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it for, you know, portable use or using it out of the house. I mean, this headphone is made to sit back in a big, comfy chair, put it on, and not really move while you're listening to it. So, you know, if that's what you're using it for, I don't think the size and weight is really an issue. You know, if you're gonna try to take it while you ride on the bus or, you know, jog down the road, this isn't the right headphone. Doesn't have much clamping force at all, so, you know, you got to be careful. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable leaning way forward because, you know, there's a lot of weight, and without the clamping force, I feel like they could come off. But, you know, if I'm sitting here in the chair, even if I lean back or whatever, you know, they stay where they're supposed to be. That's not an issue. They're not going to move. So, what do I like about this headphone? I really like the neutral tone balance with just a slight bump in the mid bass. I find that really enjoyable. Gives it just that little bit of extra weight in the low end. Love the detail, just exceptional detail with this headphone. and the soundstage. I just love that huge soundstage and the three-dimensional holographic sound it produces. Like I said, I just sound like I'm just surrounded in music and just floating in the music. So what it comes down to, do I recommend this headphone? And I would say yes, I definitely recommend it if you are okay with the size and weight. I realize it's going to be an issue for some people. I've heard people complaining about the weight of headphones that are 100, even 200 grams lighter than this. My first audiophile headphone was the Hi-Fi Man HE500, which had a metal casing, and I believe that went about 580 grams, which is about 100 grams lighter than this. And I know some people complained about the weight, other people didn't. So, some people are just more sensitive to the weight. It doesn't bother me personally, so I would say sound-wise, without a doubt, I recommend this headphone. The sound is exceptional, and I find no flaws with the sound. There is nothing at all wrong with the sound of this headphone. Nothing about the sound bothers me whatsoever. So if you are okay with a large, heavy headphone, then I would say yes, I highly recommend this headphone. And at $2,200, I mean, that's not cheap, but compared to what other headphones cost that this competes with, I actually think that's a pretty good deal. So yeah, I give it a thumbs up in my recommendation. So I'm going to wrap this up now. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you're all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.